Hello, AP Euro students, and welcome once again to another lecture with me. This evening, we're going to be looking at one of the most important subjects of the second half of the 19th century in European history, and that is going to be the unifications of Italy and Germany. Really, in many ways, it's the culmination of events that began with the French Revolution, with the bringing together of nationalism, consciousness, as well as revolution itself as a way of bringing about change. However, in many ways, the revolutions that many thought were not going to be the catalysts for these unification movements. As you'll see, these are really kind of compromises between many different groups whose interests collide together in order to create the situations that begin. So I'm going to do my best to go through this quickly. And again, reminder to, if you wish, to at the beginning of the slide, pause and take the notes down so you can also listen to my descriptions of what you're seeing on the screen. So without further ado, we're going to begin in the furthest area of the south of Europe, and that's going to be Italian unification. Perhaps not the more important of the two, but still a momentous occasion, and one where we see kind of the nationalist dreams of many coming together to fulfill what they think is ultimately Italy's destiny. So, just a little bit of context to add here. Remember Clemens von Metternich, the foreign minister of Austria. He used to sneer when people would ask about Italy. He would say, Italy is a mere geographic expression. In other words, there was no Italy as far as a people. Italy was just a place on the map. All right? And so, as it says, there was not really, to speak of being Italian meant that you lived on the Italian peninsula. People were more likely to call themselves Venetians or Romans or Tuscans or Florentines, or maybe they were Sicilians because they were from the south, so they were Neapolitans from Naples. They were Milanese because they were from the city of Milan. And that's kind of the way that people viewed themselves, really kind of connected to their local region rather than a distinct Italian country. Also, language-wise, the Italian state did not really exist. What we think of as Italy the Italian language was broken up into many different dialects. And so, there wasn't really kind of any natural geographic or even language similarities to bring these people together. But as we've already talked about, as a result of the French Revolution, a lot of these situations began to change. Italy, especially northern Italy, found itself first under French control and then kind of split up and under the control of other states in the period after the fall of Napoleon, of course, in 1815. And so with these so-called foreign entities in charge of Italian lands, this is going to begin to light the fires of nationalism, right? They have an enemy or an other that they can point to as being, they are different than us. They are not of our origin, right? Especially if you're thinking German-speaking Austrians, they don't have really any connection to Italy. And so there is kind of this common foe, or at least a group of common foes that people can point to as being the catalyst for change. And it's going to allow for the growth of nationalism, the growth of this belief that there should be a united Italian front. All right. And then there was the rise of small groups of Republicans, again, inspired by Enlightenment principle, inspired by the revolution and the getting rid of the Bourbon monarchy in the French Revolution. there were those within many parts of Italy that said that Italy should also unite itself under republican government. These groups were burning with passion. And this idea of burning passion comes up with the name Carbonari. And so these, again, are semi-secret society. These groups of people who are sharing letters back and forth and are, trying to begin a ground up, a grassroots movement of revolutionary change among the Italian states, and trying to bring about using liberal principles as a way of unifying these different groups. And while they will have plenty of resentment against kind of the states that are created by the Congress of Vienna, right? They're going to be slow and gradual in kind of creating a groundswell of revolution. But these groups, these Carbonari, these secret societies, mostly made up of young adventurers and students, right? They are going to be kind of the infancy of what we might call the nationalist movement in Italy. So our next big step comes with 1848 and the uprisings among many different cities in Italy. In the meantime, a committed nationalist that led many of these Carbonari groups, a man by the name of Giuseppe Mazzini, had started a movement in the 1830s called the Young Italy movement. You can see the description as on the second point there, right? This is a group. It was radical. He wanted a republican Italy, but he's really the first to kind of come up with this idea that what the peninsula needs is not many small states, but a united Italy, right? An Italy that is brought together through language, through customs. They get rid of all of the different monarchies and different ruling groups of Italy, replace it with a republican form of government that would also usher in universal suffrage, right? So kind of think of Italy like a United States, all right? And so Giuseppe Mazzini was a very influential person. However, his movement was still very much in the minority and was kind of a under the radar movement. It really wasn't until 1848 that there was kind of any groundswell towards change. And in Italy, there was not one unified revolution, but there was many smaller revolutions or uprisings that took place in several different capitals and large cities in Italy, where you had uprisings, again, inspired by the uprisings in France and in Vienna and other places like that. However, remember that it did not take long for the states, especially of Austria and other states like that, to reassert their control, and many of these revolutions were quickly gotten rid of. As a matter of fact, Mazzini had been instrumental in, for a brief time, proclaiming a Republic of Rome in 1848, only to have troops from Austria and other European states come in and reestablish papal control of Rome. And Giuseppe Mazzini was forced into exile, was forced to flee Italy for a time because of this. As it says, only one kingdom, and that is in the northern part of Italy, the kingdom of Piedmont, even had any sort of constitutional monarchy or even a constitution that geared towards liberalism or a limited power of the state. And so Piedmont, the northern Italian state that we're going to talk about here in just a second, that becomes the hope for any type of Italian unification. And it is going to be from the state of Piedmont, that northern Italian kingdom, where unification will begin. Before we kind of get into how it happens, I need to introduce to you two important figures in the fight for unification, the creation of an Italian state. The first is definitely the more romantic, and by that I mean kind of the person that you think of as a an adventurer, almost a Han Solo or somebody like that, that type of character, an adventurer. His name was Giuseppe Garibaldi. This is Garibaldi here. Unfortunately, this picture is black and white. If it was color, you would see that he is wearing a red shirt. He was known for leading a group of very committed adventurers and revolutionaries of about 1,000 men called the Red Shirts. Garibaldi was from the city of Nice, which is in northern Italy, and was a friend of the other Giuseppe, of Giuseppe Mazzini, and was part of the Young Italy movement. As a matter of fact, he had been part of a revolution or an uprising in Piedmont in the north, and actually had been forced out of Italy. There was a death sentence that was put against him for a time, and so he fled Italy, went to Argentina, and led anti-government uprisings there. Traveled in the United States extensively in the 1840s and 50s, trying to raise money for Italian unification. Was kind of a celebrity. And kind of a figure that people wanted to be around and see as he traveled across the United States. What makes him so important, though, is that even though he was a Republican and kind of supported Mazzini in that dream, he decided not to go the radical route, but actually compromised and was willing to accept a constitutional monarchy as long as the goal of Italian unification was achieved. And so you'll see as he kind of improves his position and uses his personal army to take control of parts of the country, he will quickly realize that he holds the key, along with the northern Italian state of Piedmont, of actually creating a unified Italy. And so we will see how that plays out by the early 1860s. The second very important figure in the Italian unification movement is this guy. This is Camillo Cavour. He was a politician. He was, we might say, conservative in his outlook. However, he was willing to accept liberal reforms and changes because he knew that it would benefit his own state, specifically Piedmont. And as the prime minister of Piedmont, it was his positions and it was his maneuvering that ultimately put Piedmont into a position of kind of leadership in the Italian unification effort. And it allowed his king, Victor Emmanuel II of Piedmont, to ultimately become the first king of a united Italy. So how is this process going to take place? All right, well, look down there at point 2. It says that if Piedmont was going to expand and grow their power in northern Italy, they were going to have to ultimately take care of the Austrians. And in order to do so, they would need some type of ally. Well, the closest ally, and the one that probably had the most interest in what Piedmont was trying to do, was going to be the state of France under Napoleon III. And so his goal was to join Piedmont and France in some type of common effort. They had a common enemy, in this case, the Austrians. And it will be this alliance between Austria and France that ultimately will bring about this change, and that is really destroying the Austrians' control in northern Italy. All right, so I want to kind of go through these maps as we see here. So let's look and begin here, and this is the first map. This is the Kingdom of Piedmont. So the Kingdom, Piedmont is this area here. It's kind of the top left, the westernmost part of the Italian peninsula. The capital city is Turin, or Torino as it's called in Italian. It's located up in the Alps mountains. They do have a lot of coastline, as you can see, in this very nice area known as Nice. And then up here on the, again, the Alps is this area known as Savoy. Now, interestingly, both of these places, both Savoy and Nice, would be joined or given to France. As we jump here into 1860, notice here that these countries are now green because they've been given to France. So in exchange for France helping the Piedmontese, the northern Italians, in fighting the Austrians, they were given this territory. All right, so this is kind of the process of unification. It's done through warfare. So first, the Piedmont, right, this area here, they ally with France, and they defeat the Austrians and take this territory right here. This is Lombardy. The main city is Milan, right here. That meant there was only one more state that belonged to Austria that that remained, and that was Venetia, which is the area of Venice that you see over here. Now the slide, as it says here, the plot twist, it says France betrays Cavour and leaves Lombardy under Austrian control. That's actually not true. Lombardy was taken by the Piedmontese. It's Venice, this area right here, that actually remains under Austrian control. Now, when the Lombardy is taken by Piedmont, these other small states like Parma here, the area known as Romagna here, Tuscany and Umbria, all of these northern Italian states, they all agree to join with Piedmont. Okay? And then the final piece is that in 1860, Garibaldi took his 1,000 troops with him to the south. They sailed from Piedmont down here along the Tyrrhenian Sea, landed in Naples, and conquered the southern Italy. Now, once Garibaldi's troops took control of southern Italy, they marched northwards to Rome, and he met the armies of Victor Emmanuel III, and there he agreed to give control of southern Italy to Victor Emmanuel. Excuse me. So when that happened, and you can see here, this is the map of Italy in 1861, right? The whole country except for the Austrian area of Venetia in the north, and then the area immediately around Rome, which was controlled by the church, remained not in Italian control. So it was in 1861 that the Kingdom of Italy was established. But it would take 9 more years until the rest of the country would be brought under control. In 1866, Austria would lose a war to Prussia, and in the peace process of ending the Austro-Prussian War, Venetia, this area here, was ceded to Italy. And then in 1870, the papacy agreed to give the area around Rome to Italy, with the stipulation that the church was able to keep the Vatican as an independent state, which it still is today, and secondly, that Rome would become the capital of United Italy. And so the capital became Rome in 1870, and that is at the date at which Italy was fully unified as a country. So you can see that this process, right? Piedmont from 1815 is created, expands its territory in northern Italy, takes Lombardy from Austria in 1860. The combination of southern Italy, which had been conquered by Garibaldi, is given under control to Victor Emmanuel of Piedmont, creating a united Italy. Venice becomes part of the Italian state in 1866 when it is taken from Austria, and then the Pope agrees to cede Rome to Italy to become the capital in 1870. So that's the process of Italian unification. It's not really a mass uprising of the people. There's no real great revolution. It's done through military conquest, defeating stronger powers, and diplomacy. Some really good diplomacy being played by Cavour and others. Cavour being willing to give up the territories of Savoy and Nice in the north to France in exchange for help in capturing Lombardy, which Piedmont would not have been able to do by itself. Allying with the Prussians in 1866 to get Venetia, and then being willing to negotiate with the papacy to get Rome. So some very important moments, and just kind of understand that it's not like the American Revolution at all, right, in order for Italy to be created. But again, in a period of about 50 years, we go from no Italy and many different states in the Italian peninsula to one united kingdom by 1870. All right, and so just to kind of finish up, this is what we said. Victor Emmanuel is named king in 1861, right, because Garibaldi is willing to give the South to Victor Emmanuel in exchange for creating an Italy. This is the famous picture that appeared in the Punch magazine in England, where Garibaldi is putting the southern part of the boot, aka Sicily, on Victor Emmanuel's foot, basically creating United Italy. But Italy is not going to is always going to be in a weak position. All right, and I want you to pay special attention to this third point. Northern Italy is industrialized. Piedmont was the most populous region of Italy. It was the most industrialized. The people are much different there. They're alpine. They live near the Alps. They're used to mountains. They have close connections to the German-speaking Austrians and to the French. Whereas in the south, it's very rural. It's very poor. There's not a lot of industrialization. The population is much more spread out. And that's why, so much of the industrial and economic power of the country will remain in northern Italy, and the south will be left to languish. This is why, in the late 19th century and early 20th century, so many hundreds of thousands of Italians leave the south from Sicily and the region around Naples, and they head to other countries, specifically, of course, the United States, right? There's so many Italian immigrants that come in the late 19th, early 20th century, and it's because of this tension between the north and south of their homeland, right? They don't see any prospects. It's better to come and try to start anew in the United States. So we'll come back to more of that story and Southern Europe in the future. Before I leave you, though, I do want to talk about the unification of Germany. And we'll see some comparisons, some things that are similar. The biggest similarity is going to be the importance of military conquest and warfare as a means of unifying Germany together. So let's kind of talk about German unification. Now, when it comes to the context of German unification, in European history, it is one of the most important events, certainly of the 19th century, because it is going to really turn Europe on its head and will really kind of set the stage for the events that take place in the 20th, namely World War I and World War II. So much of that is going to come out of this process of German unification. However, I don't want to overwhelm you guys with information, so we're going to stop this with a shorter video. Tomorrow night, you'll watch the video about German unification, or we may talk about it in class, so be looking out for that, but I will keep you posted on that. So I hope you enjoyed this quick discussion of unification in Italy, and we will pick up with Germany soon.